In the early weeks of January 2026, Buckingham Palace received reports that would mark the beginning of a constitutional crisis, unlike any seen in recent decades. Meghan Markle's appearance at the Royal Women's Empowerment Forum in Dubai on January 24 had raised alarm bells among senior officials, not because of the public optics alone, but because of the subtle ways in which institutional boundaries were crossed. Without prior consultation with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office or Palace Communication Offices, Markle introduced herself as the mother of future royal changemakers. She prominently referenced her children, Master Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor and Miss Lilith Diana Mountbatten Windsor, beneath banners and diamond-accented insignia that implicitly suggested royal endorsement. Before we begin today's royal update, I want to take a quick moment. Many of you watch these videos but haven't subscribed yet, and you don't want to miss the latest developments and fascinating stories from the world of royalty. Subscribing is completely free and keeps you up to date as everything unfolds. And while you're here, let us know, where are you watching from? Share it in the comments. It's wonderful to see viewers joining us from around the world. No mention was made of Prince Harry, and the children's identities appeared in a branding context designed to tie their names to upcoming commercial projects, including a book and lifestyle initiative. This was not a minor misstep. Internal reports from GCHQ and the British diplomatic staff in the UAE flagged unauthorized use of the royal crest and the abbreviation HR in promotional materials. In July 2025, Prince Harry and Meghan had signed a confidential memorandum prohibiting such use in foreign jurisdictions without written consent. The violation of that agreement, coupled with the overt branding of the Sussex children, was sufficient to trigger alarm within the sovereign circle. These actions, while publicized in media outlets around the world, were assessed internally as a potential threat to the continuity of royal succession oversight, not merely as a question of personal conduct. Between January 18 and 30, 2026, King Charles III made repeated efforts to reach Prince Harry. 2 communications went through official security channels in Montecito. A final message was transmitted via the British consulate in Los Angeles. There was no response. Verified photographic evidence placed Harry at the Bellagio Conference Center in Las Vegas on January 28, attending a cybersecurity roundtable alone. Observers noted his withdrawal from public and private communications. Palace aides described him as emotionally disoriented, disengaged, and unresponsive to matters regarding his children's welfare. The decision to move forward with custodial oversight was built upon 3 foundational legal pillars. First, the Succession Clarity Protocol, activated in early January, mandates continuity of care for any royal heir under 16 in the event of parental misconduct. Second, the Legacy Protection Clause, codified in 1937 and rarely invoked, allows partial custodial authority if royal minors are subject to neglect, displacement, or reputational harm. Third, the Royal Child Welfare Oversight Act, jointly developed with the Department for Education and Home Office in 2024, provides a legal framework to appoint guardianship roles superseding commercial parental claims in cases involving royal heirs. The final trigger came from documented incidents that began accumulating in mid-2025. Princess Anne submitted a formal dossier on January 27, detailing 17 instances of unauthorized title usage, 6 commercial partnerships featuring the children, and internal testimonies highlighting emotional instability and neglectful delegation of care. Additionally, flagged payments to unvetted childcare agencies in California reinforced concerns about oversight. Anne's position was clear and unwavering. The children are heirs of the Windsor legacy, not assets for branding or private gain. Her memorandum framed the issue in institutional terms, neutralizing anticipated legal pushback from Meghan's legal team, which preemptively referred to the move as maternal erasure through legacy law. The selection of Princess Catherine as royal guardian reflected both consensus and strategic planning. Internal memos described her as emotionally balanced, aligned with institutional priorities, and personally invested in the welfare of the Crown's youngest heirs. Catherine consulted child development advisors, trauma specialists, and former aides to Queen Elizabeth II to formulate a phased reintegration plan. The blueprint included bilingual education programs for Archie and Lilith, heritage reintroduction at Balmoral and Sandringham, and mandatory suspension of all commercial content involving the children. A sealed personal identity trust was established to provide financial and emotional support through 2040. Financial compliance directives accompanied the guardianship decision. Meghan was required to fulfill obligations under the 2022 Parenting Cost Share Agreement, including retroactive reimbursement of £842,000 in child-related expenditures and the transfer of all intellectual property profits derived from the children's names and likenesses. Failure to comply would trigger asset freezing under the Sovereign Separation Accords. This coordinated effort marked the first phase of what palace officials described as a measured, procedural, and legally grounded intervention designed to protect not image, but inheritance. By the end of January 2026, the palace had escalated from observation to formal action. What began as a public incident in Dubai became a documented pattern of behavior deemed incompatible with royal custodial responsibilities. Internal deliberations framed the intervention as structural rather than punitive, and the groundwork for legal filing was prepared under the Sovereign Circle's authority. The stage was set for a rare and unprecedented exercise of institutional guardianship, placing the welfare and legacy of two royal minors above the volatility of public opinion and parental ambition. For Buckingham Palace, the matter was no longer symbolic. It was actionable, deliberate, and irrevocable. Following the formal dossier submission by Princess Anne on January 27, the Sovereign Circle moved with precision to translate concern into enforceable action. By January 30, a quorum vote convened at Sandringham approved the triggering of the Royal Guardian Protocol. Queen Camilla abstained, but Princess Anne, Prince William, and Duchess Sophie voted unanimously in favor. Within 24 hours, Princess Catherine's name was inscribed as the official guardian of royal succession for Archie and Lilith. This decision, though unprecedented in scope, was framed internally as a structural necessity rather than a punitive response to parental behavior. The Crown's priority was the continuity of care, stability in education, and protection from reputational exposure. To ensure the legal enforceability of the guardianship, Buckingham Palace rapidly prepared a filing to the Family Division of the High Court of Justice. Drafted under the direction of Lord Pembroke and reviewed by Constitutional Counsel, the 47-page submission invoked three emergency instruments simultaneously: the Legacy Protection Clause, the Royal Child Welfare Oversight Act, and the newly ratified Lilith Protocol, designed specifically to safeguard minors exposed to cross-border commercialization. The petition documented Archie and Lilith's unstable schooling, noting that Archie had enrolled in 3 separate private tutoring programs in 18 months, none lasting beyond 12 consecutive weeks, while Lilith had no verified preschool enrollment after September 2025. Such patterns were presented not as isolated incidents, but as systemic disruptions incompatible with the Crown's safeguarding obligations. A detailed financial audit accompanied the petition. Between February and October 2025, over £1.2 million had been allocated from the Arrow Foundation's sub-accounts to media positioning and visual storytelling projects featuring the children. £314,000 was specifically linked to contracts preparing content for streaming services, including a proposed docuseries titled Archie and Lilith, California Royals, which lacked royal authorization. Archewell's internal allocation of funds raised concerns about transparency, misalignment with declared child-related expenditures, and potential exploitation. The audit underscored the transactional vulnerabilities identified by the Sovereign Circle. When monetization of minors intersects with parental inattention, institutional oversight becomes imperative. Internal communications revealed that the Crown was acting with calculated neutrality. Prince William insisted that all filings rely solely on objective evidence, financial records, contractual documents, and residency logs, rather than moral or emotional judgments. "We win this on paper, not outrage," he reportedly told advisors. This approach shaped both the narrative and legal strategy, ensuring the High Court would assess the matter under guardianship obligations and child welfare standards, rather than as a public spectacle. The emphasis was on risk mitigation, securing stable education, verifying care arrangements, and protecting the children from undue media exposure. Parallel to the UK preparations, Meghan Markle's legal team in California initiated a counteroffensive. Archwell filed preservation motions with U.S. courts, asserting that the children were habitual residents of California and that any attempt at extraterritorial custody enforcement could constitute jurisdictional overreach. Their filings disputed the palace's financial claims, asserting that travel, security, and consultancy expenses were reasonable given persistent media threats. Meanwhile, the public relations narrative emphasized themes of maternal erasure and institutional overreach, framing the Crown's actions as discriminatory and marginalizing to a mother of mixed-race heirs. International media coverage amplified these narratives, increasing public scrutiny while the legal process unfolded quietly behind the scenes. Despite the media noise, the palace advanced the operational mechanics of guardianship. By February 2, the Privy Council approved the Supplemental Guardianship Protocol S-26RC, granting Princess Catherine authority to appoint operational caregivers. Lady Louise Windsor was tasked with peer mentorship and cultural liaison. The Duchess of Edinburgh, Sophie, assumed responsibility for emotional well-being and logistical oversight. An unnamed education liaison coordinated transatlantic schooling compliance. Prince Edward, though not involved daily, acted as guardian liaison for emergency coordination and international movement authorizations. Funding for this framework was secured through the Windsor Child Continuity Trust, seeded with £12 million from private royal reserves, audited independently of the sovereign grant. A core element of the reintegration blueprint was the child content moratorium. The moratorium legally blocked Meghan, Prince Harry, and third-party entities from using the children's names, images, or likenesses in commercial ventures. Notices were filed with the UK Intellectual Property Office and mirrored in the US via cease and desist letters to streaming platforms. This moratorium also prohibited public narration of the children's experiences without institutional consent, ensuring that any previous Archwell media projects would be frozen or reviewed. Internally, Catherine stressed that compliance would be monitored rigorously, with penalties for violation extending to affiliated producers, agents, and publishers. Educational stabilization was another cornerstone. Archie and Lilith were enrolled in a bilingual academic program designed to rotate between the UK and Canada, emphasizing heritage, civic engagement, and critical thinking. Peer interaction would occur primarily with children of non-royal civil servants or diplomatic families to minimize media influence. The children would also receive ongoing psychological assessments, designed to detect early trauma patterns and adjust programming accordingly. The blueprint was rigorous but humane. It aimed to reconnect the children with their heritage while insulating them from public and commercial pressures. By mid-February 2026, the guardianship framework had expanded beyond policy into enforceable practice. Court filings, internal audits, and cross-jurisdictional coordination created a structural net protecting the children. What began as a Dubai event had evolved into a comprehensive, legally codified guardianship plan. The Crown's strategy remained disciplined, evidence-driven, and forward-looking, ensuring that any challenge from Meghan, Prince Harry, or media entities would be met with a robust, fact-based response. At this stage, the narrative within Buckingham Palace was clear. The focus was not punitive but protective. The monarchy had moved from reactive observation to proactive intervention, safeguarding the institution and its heirs with unprecedented precision. As February 2026 progressed, the conflict surrounding Archie and Lilith escalated into a multi-jurisdictional contest. While Buckingham Palace had solidified legal frameworks in the UK, Meghan Markle's team responded aggressively from California. On February 6, Archwell Legal submitted an emergency application to the Superior Court of California, seeking declaratory relief, asserting Meghan's full maternal custody under Sections 30,002 and 3020 of the California Family Code. The filing emphasized that both children were habitual residents of Montecito and that UK guardianship claims represented potential extraterritorial overreach. Signed affidavits from household staff confirmed that the children had resided primarily in California over the past 24 months. This move set the stage for a transatlantic jurisdictional dispute, pitting UK constitutional prerogatives against US family law. Simultaneously, the palace began coordinating international enforcement strategy. Recognizing the limits of domestic authority, Buckingham Palace activated liaison channels with US federal agencies, including the Department of State and federal family law enforcement units. Confidential memos emphasized the children's exposure to commercial exploitation, inconsistent education, and fragmented residence patterns as justifications for cross-border recognition of guardianship. Legal advisors highlighted the relevance of the 1996 Hague Convention on Civil Aspects of International Child Abduction, noting that provisional recognition of UK guardianship could be sought in US courts, pending formal hearings. This approach allowed the Crown to establish protective mechanisms without immediate physical relocation of the children. The financial dimension of the conflict further intensified scrutiny. Forensic audits conducted by UK child welfare commissioners revealed significant discrepancies between Archwell's declared expenditures and actual allocations. £726,000 had been spent on retainers for PR firms monitoring public sentiment, while over £180,000 was linked to first-class travel for Meghan. Crucially, no accredited educational receipts were recorded between July 2025 and January 2026. These findings became central to the palace's court filings on February 9, requesting court-supervised audits of any corporate or trust structures monetizing Archie and Lilith's images or identities. The legal argument framed monetization as a transactional risk to the children's welfare, underscoring the Crown's fiduciary responsibility. Meanwhile, Archwell pursued a proactive media counteroffensive. Press releases to CNN, The Guardian, and other international outlets portrayed the UK guardianship filing as a racially motivated maternal erasure campaign. The phrase, maternal erasure, became a recurring narrative, amplified across more than 48 major media articles within 72 hours. Simultaneously, the publishing sector was engaged with early previews of Meghan's memoir The Crown Behind the Crib, A Mother's Truth, which leaned heavily on themes of betrayal, race, and institutional oppression. Analysts noted that while the memoir was positioned to rally public sentiment, its commercial viability began to waver as reputational risk escalated. Internal palace communications remained tightly controlled. Princess Catherine maintained institutional silence, delegating all public commentary to the press secretary. Meanwhile, operational teams focused on implementing the reintegration blueprint. This included quarterly heritage retreats at Balmoral and Sandringham, supervised by Catherine and Princess Anne, one-on-one mentorship with Lady Louise Windsor as cultural liaison, and structured access to archival materials in the Queen Elizabeth II Legacy Library. The strategy emphasized protecting the children from premature exposure while gradually reconnecting them to their heritage in age-appropriate ways. Sealed letters from King Charles, to be opened on the children's 18th birthdays, outlined optional paths toward formal royal engagement. On February 11, an anonymous leak of internal Archwell emails exposed early-stage commercial planning for a royal children's podcast in 2025. One email described the strategy as positioning the children as aspirational without violating title boundaries, branding them heritage adjacent. Palace officials viewed the leak as corroboration of Princess Anne's claims. The children were being commercially framed without institutional authorization. Within hours, the Home Office authorized cross-border enforcement discussions with U.S. agencies, citing reputational endangerment and systematic parental commodification. The palace's legal team prepared contingency orders for provisional guardianship recognition, ensuring that any unauthorized media exposure could be halted pending judicial review. By mid-February, amicus briefs supporting the Crown's position began appearing in the High Court of Justice. International family law specialists emphasized ethical guardianship frameworks for minors exposed to public scrutiny, reinforcing the palace's argument that institutional oversight was both necessary and legally justified. While Meghan's team maintained public narratives of discrimination and maternal marginalization, internally, palace advisors focused on evidence-based filings. Financial audits, residency logs, school records, and commercial planning documents provided a robust factual foundation that outweighed emotive media arguments. Parallel to these legal maneuvers, cross-jurisdictional coordination intensified. Buckingham Palace and the Home Office engaged with U.S. counterparts to explore recognition pathways under international family law conventions. Discussions included provisional supervision of educational institutions, financial trust compliance, and monitoring of media releases involving the children. Contingency planning addressed potential non-compliance, ensuring that the Crown could enforce guardianship measures without immediate disruption to the children's residence or daily routines. The operational goal was clear: mitigate risk, safeguard welfare, and maintain institutional continuity. By February 15, the focus shifted to Prince Harry. For nearly 6 weeks, he had remained publicly silent, with no filings or statements submitted to either UK or US courts. Internally, concerns about his emotional stability reached critical levels. Reports of dissociation, fatigue, and identity dislocation prompted the palace to convene a private session with King Charles, Princess Anne, Prince William, and Catherine. The discussion emphasized that Harry's indecision could jeopardize long-term protections for the children. The outcome was the invocation of the Heritage Sovereignty Clause, reaffirming Catherine's guardianship authority and granting the Crown legal leverage to manage international compliance while minimizing exposure to parental obstruction. The transatlantic legal and media strategies had created a dual front. In the UK, the Crown relied on rigorous documentation, audit trails, and court filings to solidify institutional authority. In the US, Archwell leveraged local statutes, media amplification, and public sentiment to challenge jurisdictional overreach. At the intersection of these strategies, the children's welfare became the focal point. Provisional measures ensured continued schooling, financial compliance, and identity protection while the courts navigated complex jurisdictional questions. The stakes were unprecedented. A minor cross-border guardianship dispute intertwining monarchy, parental rights, and media exploitation, all unfolding under global scrutiny. By late February 2026, the transatlantic custody dispute had reached a decisive juncture. The High Court of Justice in London, after reviewing extensive filings, financial audits, residency records, and commercial contracts, scheduled an expedited hearing. The Crown's legal team presented a meticulously documented case highlighting systemic risks to Archie and Lilith. Evidence included irregular school enrollments, fragmented residence patterns, and monetization of their identities through commercial projects, all occurring without institutional consent. Princess Anne's sworn affidavits, detailing unauthorized branding strategies, sponsorship proposals, and public appearances in Dubai, were central. The court's attention focused on 3 pivotal legal instruments: the Legacy Protection Clause, the Royal Child Welfare Oversight Act, and the newly ratified Lyot Protocol. Each instrument reinforced the Crown's authority to establish a permanent guardian for royal minors when parental actions threatened welfare or institutional continuity. Across the Atlantic, Archwell Legal filed a motion for declaratory relief in California, emphasizing habitual residency and maternal rights under state family law. Affidavits from household staff documented daily routines in Montecito, reinforcing their argument. Simultaneously, Meghan's PR team intensified the media counteroffensive, framing the Crown's actions as racially motivated maternal erasure and institutional overreach. Headlines proliferated across CNN, The Guardian, and social networks, repeating the term maternal erasure and amplifying public sentiment against the palace. Early excerpts from Meghan's memoir, The Crown Behind the Crib, A Mother's Truth, circulated under NDA, emphasizing betrayal, race, and institutional suppression. Yet while public narratives swelled, palace advisors maintained focus on evidence-based enforcement. To manage jurisdictional complexity, the palace deployed a multi-layered international enforcement strategy. Cross-border coordination involved the Home Office, U.S. federal agencies, and Hague Convention specialists, ensuring provisional recognition of UK guardianship measures. Legal channels were prepared to secure court-supervised audits of Archwell's finances and any trust or corporate structures monetizing the children's identities. The strategy prioritized continuity of care, academic stability, and protection from commercial exploitation, without requiring immediate physical relocation. Contingency protocols included monitored compliance checks, temporary transatlantic caregiving arrangements, and court-enforced content moratoriums covering all media and merchandising initiatives. Simultaneously, Princess Catherine began phased operational implementation of the reintegration blueprint. Archie and Lilith were enrolled in structured, bilingual education programs across independent international schools in the UK and Canada. Educational charters emphasized civic engagement, critical thinking, heritage studies, and peer interaction with non-royal children. Seasonal residency rotations between Windsor and Victoria, British Columbia, were scheduled, providing controlled exposure to royal heritage while shielding the children from media scrutiny. Psychological support protocols were initiated, including regular assessments by pediatric trauma specialists and child development psychologists, addressing early signs of dislocation anxiety, identity fragmentation, and stress induced by public exposure. A formal moratorium on child-related content was executed through legal filings with the UK Intellectual Property Office and mirrored in the US via cease and desist letters. This measure applied to Meghan, Harry, and all affiliated production companies, publishers, and agents. Unauthorized podcasts, documentary series, and merchandise featuring Archie or Lilith were halted immediately. Internal palace communications emphasized that these restrictions were not punitive, but protective, ensuring that the children's identities would not be commodified while under institutional oversight. Financial compliance was simultaneously enforced. Archwell was ordered to reimburse £842,000 in misallocated child expenses and make annual contributions of no less than £16 million to the Windsor Child Continuity Trust, funding education, security, therapy, and relocation logistics through 2040. Asset freezing contingencies were prepared in both the UK and US, leveraging bilateral recognition under international parental responsibility conventions. By February 20, court filings confirmed that the Crown's provisions were enforceable, placing both educational and financial responsibilities under Catherine's guardianship oversight. The final phase focused on long-term heritage and identity preservation. Mentorship arrangements with Lady Louise Windsor as cultural liaison, supervised heritage retreats at Balmoral and Sandringham, and curated archival access through the Queen Elizabeth II Legacy Library provided measured exposure to royal tradition. Sealed letters from King Charles outlined optional pathways for formal re-entry into public royal life at adulthood, ensuring that Archie and Lilith retained personal agency over their engagement with institutional duties. Catherine's operational team, including Duchess Sophie and a confidential educational liaison, coordinated transatlantic compliance, emergency medical authorizations, and structured socialization protocols. Publicly, the palace framed the resolution as a protection measure rather than a confrontation. Clarence House issued a concise statement emphasizing continuity, dignity, and structured oversight. Media briefings stressed that the children were safeguarded from commercial exploitation and instability, while allowing for eventual voluntary engagement with royal heritage. Meghan Markle's legal team continued to challenge jurisdictional claims in California, but the strength of evidence, documented financial discrepancies, unauthorized branding initiatives, and residency logs rendered the case increasingly difficult. Publishers reported hesitation regarding the memoir, and streaming platforms began complying with content moratoriums, signaling institutional dominance over the narrative. By late February, the reintegration process was operational. Archie and Lilith were no longer central to media branding. Their education, emotional health, and heritage access were carefully monitored and managed. Prince Harry, still privately grappling with personal loyalty and public scrutiny, was gradually engaged through controlled communications, allowing input without compromising the Crown's protective framework. Internally, senior royals regarded the operation as a success. The children were removed from transactional exploitation, shielded from reputational volatility, and placed under structured guardianship capable of enduring both domestic and international pressures. As one palace source summarized, "This is not punishment, nor exile, it is continuity, protection, and reclamation of legacy."